welcome back. I've got Adam Malone on the line. Adam, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Michael?
I am awesome. Really looking forward to this chat. I always love talking to people that are making big differences and making our leaders better. So why don't you share a little bit about you and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. I was in the corporate world for about 20 years, same company for 17. And last summer, I decided to make a shift and move into leadership consulting. The background as to the why there really has to do with about 7, 8 years ago now, I got an opportunity to move from the corporate side into the operations side. And it was an awesome opportunity. Really cool kind of work that I got to do. We were forming a relationship with Apple. They needed someone to own that relationship and kind of implement it through our supply chain. Um, Got to travel a ton, which I like. Got to work on cool stuff. Had a lot of attention. All those, high performer, pat your back sort of feelings that were great. And then about 6 or maybe 9 months in, I was on a plane on a Monday morning headed to Cupertino, California, to have a meeting with those guys. And I didn't feel good. I was kind of sick. Had been a long weekend with the family in some ways, a short weekend, really, because I'd just gotten off the plane from the Philippines Friday night. Um, and I just kind of realized like I can't keep this pace up. I can't do this on my own, and I've got to do something different. And so that kind of is what moved me from what I've heard a friend of mine call a hobbyist leader. You're a leader with one or two sort of people, but mostly you're an individual contributor, and really set me on the path of figuring out how to build better and stronger teams and create tenacity not only in myself, but in the fabric of the team. Because really what I realized in that that 4 hour plane ride was like I've been kind of doing this on my own even though I had a team, and that's not what's going to be sustainable and help my marriage and help me enjoy life. And so I've got to do something different. So that kind of set me down the path of leadership growth and development, and ultimately ended me up here today.
Well, thank you for the journey. And I'm also thankful for the fact that you recognized um, that how you were going about things wasn't sustainable because I think if you would have continued down that path, you could have had some significant health issues or who knows what, relationship issues, you name it, burnout. I do a lot of work in that space, had my own personal burnout journey many, many years ago. And I was kind of going down a similar path. I had a team, but for some reason I felt like that I had to be Superman and do all of it myself, which is really ironic because I love Batman more than Superman, but that's another story for another day. I've got a Hot Toys Michael Keaton Batman figure right over here. But anyway, it's a situation where you recognized it, and a lot of people, and especially leaders, they don't. They don't
Yeah,
recognize those signs, uh, and they just blow right past them. You know, uh, they're doing 150 on I-5. It's like you just blew past the signs. You're ignoring the sirens, which is not a good thing. But
right,
you will end up on television because
right.
we all know we love ourselves a police chase in L.A. Um,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, it's you caught that, and then so you land in Cupertino or you land at the airport and then you
yeah,
head
yeah.
over to Apple. And I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you go, when you start walking into, their headquarters and all of that, you had this on your mind and going, hmm, this may be one of the last times I walk in here in this capacity. So, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what was that experience like? Because you said, okay, this is not sustainable, and now all of a sudden you're going in to, do your work, but you've had this awakening basically on an airplane, going, okay, this is not sustainable. So what was, and obviously don't give the details because I don't want Apple coming after you, because
Yeah,
they put
nobody wants that.
they put the A in NDA, okay? So
Yeah.
you don't want them after you. Love the products. I've got two iBinkies right over here, so we're good. But and I'm on a MacBook, so But anyway, what was that like? I'm just
Yeah.
curious. What was that like when after you get off the plane and you head over there? What were some of the things bouncing around in your head?
Yeah. So I want to comment on something you said about kind of your journey in the same place, because it sounds like we've had some similarity, and I've had some time to reflect on the why. Like, why do you get to that place? And I think for most of us, you're gonna be us, and I think your listeners, what makes us super successful early in our career is being the guy or the girl, like being the person who gets the phone call, who has the answer, who works 10 hours in the evening to like get the thing done and give it over the finish line. And um, for most of us, that builds like a bit of a dopamine sort of addiction, is my opinion. Of we all want to be successful. We all like to be the guy that gets the call. We all want to be the one in the hot seat, or at least, people like me, like you, like most of your listeners. But what happens and what happened to me is you are super successful in that, individual contributor role. And then you get like a really small team that maybe is doing the exact same thing that you've done really well. But still 80% of your value is about, the work that I do myself. And so then you're successful, and then you might get a slightly larger team. And all of a sudden you get into this position where you can't create enough value on your own anymore to justify your position. But no one taught you how to make value the other way. Like no one said like, "Hey, Michael, you're a great IC, but as you move into a team leader role, here's the 6 things that you have to just hit out of the park to drive value through a team as opposed to just drive value through yourself and your own actions." And it's completely different work. It takes a completely different set of skills that sadly sometimes get called soft skills. That's probably a different rant. Um, but it leads you down this path of you get into a position where all of a sudden you're trying to create enough value to justify your 6-figure salary and your better bonus pool because you've gotten into leadership, but no one taught you how. And so for me, that feeling of when I was walking in, and I have to admit, I've never actually been to one Apple Park. I've been to quite a few Apple buildings, but little dirty secret most people don't know is very few of the Apple team actually work in Apple Park. They got a lot of other buildings. So, but as I was walking in and kind of going through that, the number one thing I realized was I was putting myself in the center of every decision, of every piece of work, of reviewing everything that was coming in and out. And so, one, that meant I was a manager, a delegator, as opposed to someone who is empowering, right? I had this conversation with a client 2 days ago. The difference between delegation and empowering is when I delegate, I tell you the things you need to work on. And when I empower, I point you at a situation or an issue, and then you go tell me what you're going to work on. And I think most of us kind of get that really twisted, and we believe that when we're like playing air traffic control, uh, we know empowerment is a big leadership word, and so we use it. And so we say, "Oh, I'm empowering these people." All the while, that's not what happened. You just kind of delegated tasks. So, sorry to take a step back. So, walking into that building and kind of in those conversations, the number one thing I realized was if I'm going to step back, I have to trust other people as much as I trust myself to step forward. And building the relationship of trust and building a trusted team that's ultimately that's why a lot of my consulting work and corporate speaking deals with building trust, is because for me, I couldn't step back until I trusted someone to step forward, and I had to go build that muscle.
And it's such a huge, huge muscle, and you hit it a moment ago. It's like most people that are in management roles that escalate up to leadership roles, yeah, it's a name change on the business card or a title change, I should say. But as far as training you and teaching you how to be a leader, That tends to be non-existent. I mean, there are a
Right.
handful of organizations that do it, and they do it well because they recognize they're like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
no, in order for you to lead this ship, we need you to know what you're doing. And a stat that I share all the time, of 2000, the year 2000, the Fortune 500 companies from the year 2000, 52% of them are gone or they were acquired.
Mm. Yeah.
So you do the math on that. It's like, well, what happened? Mm, you could say, market changes, but yeah, it's quarter century ago, but yeah, the world was a little bit different, but not that different. As far as people buying things and products and services, we're still using, maybe some different things, but we're still using a lot of the products and
Right.
services that were around then. It came down to leadership, bad choices, not trusting their people, retention. You see this, I'm sure, all the time. Your retention
Oh
is
yeah.
a huge, huge problem and has been for a while. It continues to get worse, and a lot. And there's a lot. Everybody's like, well, "Why are we having trouble retaining?" Well, do you trust people? Are you equipping them? And what I mean by equipping them is not delegating, like you said, and I love how you said that. It's okay. You need these tools in order to be able to do your job well. Make sure we get you those tools. You have those tools. Okay, next. Do you know how to use these tools? Okay, let's get you, let's either mentoring up or partnering up with people, get you everything so you're an expert. Going into, trusting like that example where it's like, okay, I have to trust my people to be able to, take this ball and run with it. All right, well, what do I need to do in order to trust them? What do they need from me? And that goes to, do you know your team? And a lot of leaders don't. And it's like,
Right.
well, I got a 50,000, employee organization. I can't know everybody. No, but your people that you trust that are reporting to you can know them. And then it gets to the point where everybody will know what's going on. They know all the moving parts. And that's why whenever I see or talk to people, and like, yeah, we're looking for a new leader. And I tell them, I said, make sure they're really strong in ops because
Mm. Yeah.
they need to see the big picture. I'm a big picture person. Does that mean they need to know how to use the copy machine or if even for those that still use those things, or scanning or email attachments or how to access this portal or whatever? Okay, those are nuanced things, not a big deal. But understanding the market, understanding who you have, your team, that's why you see championship teams keep winning. That's why you saw the Patriots with Brady and Belichick kept winning. That's why you're seeing Kansas City doing kind of the
Right.
same thing. It's like, oh, I've seen this playbook before. Okay, we'll see how if it has a long run like the Patriots did. Don't know. Don't have money in the game coming up at the time we're recording. Super Bowl's on Sunday. The best image that I've seen though on this was a meme. It's like who are people rooting for? So it was a map of the U.S. Around Kansas City, they had the Chiefs logo. In Philly, they had the Eagles logo, and then the rest of the country was gray. And then the grid it said gray. The gray was baseball season. It's like
Oh,
I'm
oh
like
man.
I'm like wow, there's some hate for these teams. I'm like, why the hate, peeps? Why the hate? But completely side note, I don't know where that came from, but
Yeah, don't drag us into that. We don't want I don't want to get a text. You don't want to get text. You're gonna make people mad.
I know. It's like, look, no, I hope the best team wins. Who's the best team? We're gonna find out Sunday around 10 o'clock, give or take. But again, it's like retention. That's one of the things I want to talk about too. Is
Yeah.
when you have a solid organization, there are a lot of ingredients that make that happen. It's not like, well, we have a really good leader that cares for their people. Okay, that's a Hallmark card, people. I mean, I know I talk and say those words, but it's a Hallmark card. It's all about action. It's like why? Okay, let's dig
Yeah.
deeper. Why is that organization they caring? Well, what does that look like? Walk me through that. So teams that are able to retain their talent. Okay, why? What are their? It's not a secret per se. It's not like, well, we have this, we have this machine in the lounge, and it's like, no, that's not it. Cool, they got it, but that's not it. Uh, Trust is a big thing.
Yeah.
Communication, obviously. empowering people to be their best and their sweet spot. It's like this is when you operate well, and this is when you feel creative as an employee. If we can gear projects and work where you get to spend your time there, um, uh, Monday mornings, they're like chomping at the bit to get back in there. Like, I got to start working on it. You got to yell at them because they start working on a Sunday afternoon and they're texting you. It's like, will you stop working? Get back to work on Monday. This is Sunday. You don't work Sunday. Turn it off. But again, you have those types of environments. So for organizations, obviously with the experience, obviously in corporate, but then also now with the work that you're doing now,
Yeah.
you know, are are there, and I'm not saying any secret sauce things, but what are you seeing organizations do now that are helping with the retention side of things? Because I know a lot of organizations are really struggling with this right now.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I think it's really important for organizations to pay attention to it. So, quick stat: Gallup recently released their engagement and looking to leave metrics, and if I remember right, the looking to leave metric was either 25 or 30%. I don't remember which. Which, for context, that metric was 5 points lower. I remember the delta, I don't remember the exact numbers, was 5 points lower during the great resignation. And so when every employer was freaking out because people were leaving, the metric that is the number one leading indicator of that was lower than it is now, which means that the number one reason people aren't leaving is that employers are still a little gun shy about posting roles. This is my opinion. And so if or when the dam breaks on kind of companies resuming higher post-election and is inflation in control and those things, there's a train headed down the tracks at basically every organization. First, let's kind of quantify the problem, right? Second, there's always going to be this debate now. Like, are we a hybrid organization? Are we an in-office organization? Are we a remote organization? And frankly, I don't care. I don't think it matters for your organization once you've made the decision and you have embraced it. Where I see organizations struggling in this is when they give really unclear guidance on what sort of organization are we, and they're kind of schizophrenic in their messaging. Oh, well, we're a in-office organization, but then 30% of the employees get to be remote. Or even worse, organizations that are in say that they're in office or require 3 or 4 days a week in office, but all their leadership team lives in a different freaking city. Like, I don't understand. Like, how do you tell these people that they need to come to the office, but all the other quote quote C-level people don't have to? You want to talk about creating rancor in a group. When people see inequality, if you have a SVP or a C in your title, they see that. And that like erodes trust, it erodes happiness, and you can't stand on like your whatever you've said you believe if fundamentally the most important people, I say important as in level, they get exempted from it. So I don't mean to I don't want to create that a big debate on, which is better, because I think any of them are great, and I've worked in all of them, and there's none of them has to be like a silver bullet answer. But your organization can't be schizophrenic about which one you are. That's one, and it's a hot button for lots of people.
Yeah, definitely. And people ask me, especially when they when we first had the start of the pandemic, and you had organizations saying, "We are now going to be a remote-only organization," and my comments to people, that were looking to work there or are working there, and talking with the leaders of those organizations, yeah, I said, now this policy of only going to be remote, did you write that in pencil by chance? And they'd look at me like, I said, you guys are making these forever and ever amen type of, agreements or statements, which is kind of ironic because half the population gets divorced anyway. So forever is a loose term, having being in one of those groups. But the thing that I saw was like, okay, very reactionary. I get it. We all had to react. We didn't. There wasn't a
Yeah,
playbook.
that
We
was
had to like
survival.
Yeah, it was survival. It's like, okay, we everybody got sent home and did that. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the dynamics of, okay, some people were going back in some industries. They couldn't work remote. So you started to see, some people being a little disgruntled and people that were, the frontline people that had to be out there. We saw a lot of attrition because they're like, wait a minute, I can't, I have to risk my life, or I have to go to in all the time where I have people making more money that aren't. And they're like, well, why am I doing this? So we saw a lot of
Yep.
deck chairs getting shuffled around and people leaving and going, oh, no. And then you have this situation, okay, 100% everybody back to work. All right, that's fine. I'm not going to name names, but there have been many high-profile executives that have said our organization is returning to 100% in work. And it's like, okay, are you 100% in the office? And
Yeah.
I don't know that because I don't work for that organization.
Yep.
And like, are you there?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to make a comment about that publicly, then my personal feeling is your ass better be in the office more than your employees. I'm just saying
Yeah.
this it's an optics thing. It's a
Yep.
when
Hypocrisy is
people
a cancer.
big time and to play on the name of your organization's words, tenacious.
Yeah.
Now this is just personal, my personal feeling. When I think back to the leaders that I worked for over my career, the ones that stand out are the ones that were there. They said what they were saying. They walked the walk. They talked the talk. Um, they were there before me until I started getting in there earlier, and then they got a little frustrated. They're like, "I can't get in here earlier than you." I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm doing this because that early for me, that early morning was the way I was saying, let me get everything set. Let's get all the
Yeah.
ingredients ready to go. But I'm like that. Other people are like, It's like, start time's at 9. I mean, they're there at 9. They ain't awake until 10, but they're there at 9. So,
Right.
but going back to what you were saying about, the remote or this, I'm with you on it. It's like, I don't care, but what makes sense for your company, what makes sense for your customers. Don't forget them. Let's
Yep.
figure out what makes sense. If it can be a hybrid thing where it works well and there isn't this animosity between your team members, because again, that can kill an organization with retention really quick. All you need to do is lose a couple key people and then watch the dominoes just go. And then you're like, okay, what just happened? Well, you put all your eggs
Right.
in one basket. You shouldn't have done that. But yeah, sometimes you got to learn in order to do
Yeah.
that. And, another thing I see with retention too, especially with, pay gaps and all of that stuff, we're seeing a huge retention problem because 7 out of 10 Americans are up to their eyeballs in debt and
Mm.
they're stressed out. They're worried about their finances. They're like, how do I get more money? Well, yeah, you can take a job that'll pay me a couple $1,000s more a year, but that what's that tax bracket going to do? You end up going, wait a minute, I'm working these new job, got the extra salary increase, but my net pay doesn't look like anywhere near what I thought it would be. So they're still in that financial struggle. So you're starting to see a lot of organizations look at, okay, what we can do to give some of our employees some financial relief? And it's not necessarily a raise. It's like, okay, is there some
Right.
benefits programs out there? There's something that we can offer that can help them with that outside of things. And, but of course, it can be in many cases a cost issue for the employer. And like, we can only pay so much in benefits because our insurance rates are going up. So there's, again, being in operations, there's all these ingredients going on,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you wear so many different hats as an ops leader, and it can be tiring, to say the least. But maybe you had hair when you started. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like,
I had a lot more hair and it wasn't as gray at both of those.
I had a lot more hair, and well, I shave it, so I don't have to look at the gray. Good,
Yeah.
but because the gray is there. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not cool. It's like, wait a minute, Dad wasn't gray at this age. What the hell? But anyway, but no, what you says is point, is well point taken. There's organizations, going back to what you said before, need to figure out who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And so to your question about retention, one is just figure out who you are. But I would say, kind of resonating on some of the points you made, one of the big things I work with my partners on is that trust aspect, which you mentioned. And so what we see is that organizations that don't have a high trust factor are going to fail on multiple leading metrics related to retention. That's things like looking to leave, engagement, which sometimes gets different definitions, but I would say just engagement is, are your people active and involved, or are they always looking at the clock to see when they can leave? That's to me kind of how you gauge engagement. Retention, looking to leave, engagement, and there's a few other metrics as well that all kind of head towards, do you have an environment that people want to be a part of? And that's the reason I focus on the fabric of trust in what I work with people on. One, because people misunderstand trust. They think you can build it, and they don't understand that really I can't establish trust with you, Michael. I can invest time in traits that will lead you to trust me, or lead you to give me your trust, is really the better way to say that. But I can't hold you at gunpoint and make you trust me. And so establishing or building trust is actually investing in other traits like empathy, authenticity, and logic. And then once I've done that sufficiently, you will begin to give me your trust. And as I perform reliably, you'll give me more of your trust, right? And that's how that grows. And it's the exact same way with our teams and our employees. And so that can be things like you mentioned, people want income stability or income growth. Well, understanding that on an empathy level is super important to make people feel heard when they say, "Hey, I'd like to have a raise." You may have to tell them no, but that doesn't mean you don't validate their feelings, or invalidate their feelings. You can rather instead approach that really authentically and say, Michael, I understand you want that. We don't have a role open right now. So, two things for promotion readiness: we have to have a role, and you have to be ready. One, we don't have a role, but two, it's not clear that you're ready for that. Here's three skills that you need to improve or grow in or develop in order for you to be ready for that next level. And so then you kind of lead into, well, now they understand the logic of why I say I want more money, I say I want to get promoted, and it just, a magic fairy doesn't just appear and do that for me. So I have to, so like, they start to buy in and understand the logic. And then you can shore up that authenticity is, hey, Michael, you need to develop these three skills. Here's how I'm going to help you develop them. And then you follow through on that. And all of a sudden, when someone feels like they have a future, they have opportunity, and they have a leader that's investing with them in all of those traits, oh, well, I can really see how I'm going to have a 5 or a 10 year runway here based on the fact that I'm being developed, I'm being given opportunity, I'm growing, and I can see how that's going to eventually lead towards more income. I don't want to take the risk of leaving and going somewhere else because look at all the opportunity I have here, right? But you have to, as a leader, invest if you want to kind of improve those retention metrics and not just throw money at people, which is it's a a solution that doesn't work if it's just, okay, I'll just give you more money when you ask for it. It's not scalable or sustainable.
Yeah, I think of the times when I was able to give my team, salary increase or bonus or anything like that for performance. It is a very, very short win period. So basically, I like to use the analogy. It's like, okay, it's like, Christmas presents, for example. Okay, everybody opened up their Christmas present. Yay, everybody's euphoric. Thank you so much and all that. And then by New Year's, they might be wearing or using or playing with whatever they got, but that euphoria is gone. It's the same thing with a raise. It's like people,
Yep.
unfortunately, in many cases, raise their expenses to match their revenue, or in the case of what we're seeing right now, it's like, okay, they're just applying the extra few dollars towards their debt or whatever their cost of living is. So it's short-lived. But saying, you know what, we're going to invest in you, and here's some professional development ideas. We're going to pair you up with this person. They're going to mentor you on this. You're going to work on some projects to get some skills that are needed for this next level for you, and a map out. And then they're like, oh wow, this is going to be good. And I did that with people when I worked in healthcare too, and they were able to take on some leadership roles, and then they had opportunities outside the organization that were better aligned with where they wanted to be. And guess what? They were well trained and prepared to lead those organizations. The doctors were
Yeah.
mad at me because they left, but I'm like, it was a better opportunity for them. We had a part in helping them be better. So guess what? Healthcare and patients are getting better care because this person, learned how to do this. It's like
Yeah.
we'll wash, rinse, repeat. We'll bring somebody else in and do the same thing.
Right. And I think the piece that often gets misunderstood is, well, they may leave if we train them. And I understand that concern. Like you can overinvest. That's a thing. But what I have seen personally is more often what happens is if you are really investing in training in someone, as long as there is a runway of opportunity, they're not often going to leave. I mean, I remember one of the times I realized I had been successful. Like I can gauge success, and sometimes in leadership you don't get those opportunities. But it's when I had a lady working for me who just knock out fantastic team member. I hope to work for her one day. She's awesome, still is now. Um, and I knew another organization was approaching her about a promotion to VP. And I told them they could. Um, and in our one-on-one the next week, she said, "Hey, that org, talked to me about this role." I was like, "Cool. Like, what do you think?" She's like, "Well, I mean, I'd like to be a VP, but I I don't think that getting that money is worth leaving a culture and a team that I know and love. And I've reached a point in my career where that money is not small, but the truth is it's not going to change my family's life. And so I would rather be in a culture and a team that does change my family's life than to go take the risk and move to a culture or a company that I'm not really certain what's on the other side of that change. And once you get people saying, "Hey, I was going to get a 15% raise and, a significant change in my bonus pool, but I'm not certain it's worth the risk. I'd rather stay here." That's when you know that you've started to develop a culture that can be sustaining because you don't constantly lose your best people.
Yeah, I worked with a boss like that during the dot-com era where, recruiters would place you, and then 6 months later they'd call you and say, "Do you love the job?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's really great." It's like, "Well, I got one that pays you 25% more." It was a zoo back then, but there was an
Right.
organization that I, was with, and same environment where I felt there was a runway, I was being taken care of, acknowledged, growth opportunities, you name it. And I told the recruiter, start calling me every couple of years if you could, just to kind of see what the market's
Yeah,
like.
keep it
I,
warm.
I was like, I'm really, really happy here. And yeah, the extra money would be awesome, but you know what? I'm having a blast here. And if in the, in closing, I think that's a reminder for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're in a leadership role, front line, anywhere in between. If you can find an environment that will give you a runway and allow you to grow both personally but professionally,
Mm.
the money will take care of itself. So
Yep.
I've loved this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So for clarity, my company's name is the Tenacious Operator. I'm Adam Malone. The easiest way to get in touch with me in North America, the short code 33777. If you'll text that number with operator as the keyword. So that's operator to 33777. That's the fastest and easiest way. Beyond that, I'm super active on LinkedIn, post about great leadership every day with a focus on trust and empathy, and building a culture of feedback. So, LinkedIn every single day, you'll catch me there. I'd love to connect with the audience.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that information in the show notes. So, Adam, thank you for this important work that you're doing. It's making companies better, which makes everybody better. So, I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Michael. It's been a great job.